Hi, and welcome to the Needling Hooker. For those of you new to the Needling Hooker channel, I'm Tom. I'm your host. I want to welcome all of you who've followed me for a while and welcome you back. It's been a while, and I'm really happy to see you that you're with me today. As you know, I made a move from California to East Tennessee back in December, and a lot of things have transpired over the months, and some good, some not so good, some hectic, some not so hectic. But anyway, so I have not really had extra time to upload any new videos in the past months. But now that's going to slightly change, I hope, for the better. Or, as many of you know me better, the Needling Hooker. I have some news for you. And before I get into the news, which is something that I think you all will want to hear, I am redoing this video clip with this news piece because when I went to put all my video clips together for the tutorial the other day for the Fall Festival, this particular video clip was somehow corrupted and wouldn't play. So I'm now having to redo that and then insert it. So you'll see part of the video with the tutorial with me wearing what I was wearing for the tutorial, and part of it you'll see me in this red shirt. Oh well, can't do much about it, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, so this is the public service announcement that I want to share with you. Many of you know that I am also a singer and songwriter, as I mentioned in some past videos and even in the Fall Festival video. But I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit and hope that a lot of you out there will tune in and listen to some of my new music that I've written, original songs that are out there now on streaming platforms, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and so forth. But they're also via my YouTube channel, and I have a separate YouTube channel for my music. So I would like to invite you all to join me and subscribe to my music YouTube channel, which is simply my stage name that I perform under, which is Tucker Morgan, Tuckermorgan. So some of the songs that I've written, I'm completely into older music, like from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, whether it's pop or jazz or standards, country music specifically. I'm into the traditional classic country music sound and style of the 40s to the early 60s. So all but 3 of the songs I've written so far, I've written 7 in total. 4 are now up and going on a lot of the streaming platforms, as I said. And then the other 3 are in the process of being produced, arranged, and musically instrumented, and then will be available hopefully very soon. One of the songs, which is called This Broken World, there's going to be a link in the comment section here in the notes section of the tutorial video that you're watching right now. And that will take you to my YouTube page, but it will also be, it's a direct link on the page for that song. That song, I was inspired to write that because of everything that was going on in the last year with, all the riots and the shootings and everything that's just been going on with our whole country, in fact, all over the world, that has sort of made us ununited. And so thus the title, This Broken World. So I'm hoping that a lot of people will listen to that, and it will help to unite us all as a nation, as a people. And I ask that you share the song with everybody you know, play it for them. If they don't do YouTube, you can let them know they can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and they can look it up either by the song title or under Tucker Morgan. Again, that's the name I sing under. I write under my given legal name, which I won't give on YouTube. I won't give my full name for, security purpose. As you all probably are aware, these days there's a lot of bad people in the world, so don't want to give out too much personal information. But anyway, the most recent song that has come out is completely old style country sound, and that is also now on my YouTube page. But it was put on my YouTube page because that's being converted into an artist's YouTube page at the moment. So the distributor that is distributing all of my songs onto the streaming platforms has put that one on my YouTube channel. But if you go to that and click on it, and there'll also be a link for that in the notes section here on this video. So when you're done watching, you can get that link as well. But there's nowhere on there to leave a comment should you want to comment about the song, because the distributor, when they distribute stuff to YouTube Music, for some reason they turn off the comment thing where comments are not allowed. So if you want to comment on the song itself, feel free. You can always email me at tuckermorganmusic@gmail.com. You can also put a reference. There's 3 music videos that I've put together of 3 of the 4 songs that are currently done, that I personally made videos of and put on my YouTube channel. So you can always go in one of those and make a comment and reference the most current song, which is called Without Me on Her Mind, and let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about all the songs and This Broken World. Again, if you'll pass that around to people, because I really want to unite everyone. My reason why I'm trying to become a singer and songwriter is it's always been a lifelong dream for me to become a singer, primarily, older country music. Songwriting is kind of new to me. I'm new at that. However, I've written short stories and poems over the years. But I was inspired by a lot of the country great legends: Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, Ernest Tubb, Farron Young, and the list goes on and on, Jim Reeves. But it's been a lifelong dream, and the dream always kept getting put on the back burner all of my life, because I always, like everybody, had to work. But aside from working, always something always came up, family issues or different things in life, that I always had to keep putting things on the back burner. That, along with the fact that I never had the extra money to put out to make a demo CD or anything like that back in the day. So now I'm trying to take a different approach. So word of mouth is a good thing. So feel free to share some word of mouth if you want. No obligation, but I would greatly appreciate it and would forever, ever be grateful. Again, I want to thank you. I'm hoping that you're enjoying the tutorial. I'm hoping that you are enjoying my other videos. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do subscribe to my channel here, The Needling Hooker. But also make sure when you go over to Tucker Morgan to subscribe and like and hit the bell icon, so that you'll be notified when I do upload other future videos to do with my music. And again, continue on with the video and enjoy. I hope that today is going to be one of many more to come, that we're all together. And let me say why we're here today. Well, as you know, the Needling Hooker does tutorial videos, and this one is a very special tutorial. About a year ago, maybe a little bit less, I was invited to be part of a 3-person project, and that was created by and organized by Jay of Jay's Knit and Purl Jam. And so myself and Jay and a good friend of Jay's, and hopefully a longtime new friend of mine that I've now gotten to know from following Cabin Fever Crochet, is Miss Helene. Hi, Helene. Hi, Jay. Shout out to the ladies. Anyway, so Jay thought it would be kind of nice if we put together a fall festival. And if you saw the introductory video on either my channel, The Needling Hooker, or you may have seen it on Jay's channel, Jay's Knit and Purl Jam, or Helene's channel, Cabin Fever Crochet, then you know what this festival's all about. It's fall, changing leaf colors and everything else, and pine cones. That means getting ready for the winter and Christmas. But right now, being fall, and the pine cones are starting to emerge, that is the theme of the fall festival. So in keeping with the theme, the 3 of us are each individually designing and doing a project using the fir cone stitch, which I'll mention again later in the video. But in knitting and or crochet, there are stitch books where you can pull various stitches to use for projects and design. And these stitches have been around for many, many years. They're just compiled in different books. So you're going to see, if you ever run across it, in some of the knitting stitch books, you're going to see the stitch listed as the fir cone stitch, which is the variation we're using today. And you'll also see it maybe listed as the pine cone stitch. But for today, I'm going to be using the fir cone stitch, as is Jay with her project and Helene with hers. And I won't tell you what those are, but I know that they both created something absolutely wonderful that you're going to enjoy learning how to make, and possibly make a bunch, because I think they're going to make nice gifts. Anyway, so that you'll have a working guide to look at while you're watching the tutorial and having the visual guide as we're going along with the project, I'm going to go ahead and put the written typed out pattern up on the screen for you, so that you can go ahead and write that out or what have you, so that you'll have it there as a written guide to go by and also to use after the tutorial for future. So without further ado, here comes the pattern. Welcome to my contribution to the Fall Festival. So why don't you join me on over at the work table and we'll get started. See you in a bit. Okay, welcome to the project table. So now you should have the pattern written down in front of you as a guide. And like I said, it's going to be, especially for the beginner knitters, having the pattern written out so you can look at that and learn how to read a knitting pattern if you don't already know how. If you do know how but only know the basics, I'm going to go over the terminology with you really quick and run through the pattern with you. And visually, I think especially beginner knitters are going to learn a little bit easier with the visual. I know I'm a visual person. If I see somebody do something, it's a lot easier for me to pick it up watching than to read it, although I've now learned how to read a knitting pattern and write one. So here we go. We're going to go over the pattern. You should have that written out in front of you. Okay, and the pattern reads, starting from the top, we are using the fir cone stitch. And a lot of you may have looked in your knitting stitch books to find different stitches for different projects, and you may have seen it listed as the pine cone stitch. But we are using the version called the fir cone stitch. It is a multiple of 10 plus 1, which means it's 10 stitches for the pattern repeat plus 1. So if you're doing 5 pattern repeats, you would do 50 plus 1 would be 51. So in this case, and I'll explain that as we go down. The yarn size, you can use a 3 light if you'd like to. I'm using a 4 medium as I think that's better for the fall weather, especially back here in eastern Tennessee. Needles, you can use straight needles. I'm using circular, US number 9. The pattern is worked horizontally, and then you sew the 2 ends together when finished, which that'll come up later. You'll see how to do that. You're going to want to work 6 or 7 pattern repeats across in between your border stitches. And I started out trying to do 5 pattern repeats, and it wouldn't go over my head as a neck warmer. So I did 6 pattern repeats. If you want it to be more like a cowl and drape down and be longer, then you're going to have a lot more pattern repeats, maybe 10 or 12. It all depends. But today we're doing it as a neck warmer. Your border is, the border stitches are going to be worked in garter stitch. And for those new beginner knitters, garter stitch is where you knit every row. The right side and wrong side is knitted. There is no purling. Stockinette stitch, you knit on the right side, you purl on the wrong side. In designing the pattern, I tried doing stockinette stitch for the border, and I just didn't like the way it looked. And I thought, you know what? If I do garter stitch, it's going to maybe have the texture and the look of a pine cone, which it did. So your border is going to be 3 border stitches on either end. In between the pattern stitches and the border stitches, you're going to have a stitch marker. So after the first border, your first 3 stitches, you'll put a stitch marker. And after the end of the pattern repeats, right before the final 3 stitches on your needle, you're going to put a stitch marker. So you'll always know where the border is, so you can just knit those rows on every row you knit, and you'll know that you're going to be doing the pattern on one side and the purl row on the other side in between those markers. To go ahead and start with, you're going to knit 2 rows to start so that you'll have a straight edge at the bottom of the neck warmer, and that is optional. I didn't do that. I threw that in the pattern in case you want more of a straight neck edge at the bottom that comes, to the bottom part of your neck. But the way that we're going to do it in the tutorial is without the knitted 2 rows before starting row 1 of the pattern. So let's get into the terminology. So for those of you that are a new beginner knitter, or those of you who only know the basic terminologies like knit and purl, I'm going to tell you a couple of terminologies. RS obviously is right side, WS is wrong side. YO is yarn over. I will demonstrate the yarn over when we get to it in the pattern. SK2P stands for slip 1 stitch, knit 2 stitches together, pass the slip stitch over. So again, I will demonstrate that when we get to that in the pattern, when we're actually doing it here in a minute. And and PSSO stands for pass slip stitch over. Other than that, I think you're good on the terminology. So now before we get started, let me show you the final product. So here we have the top that will go up by your chin. The bottom edge, I'm going to lay it down here. The bottom edge, see how you have little scallops? If you do the knitted 2 rows before you start the pattern, you'll have a straight bottom edge like this. So it all depends on what you'd like. I wanted to try it this way, so that's what I came up with. And if you'll notice how we have the little pine cones. Can you see the pine cones in there? Bring it up a little closer. Hopefully we're focused. All right. Well, let's dig in and get started. I'll set this over here out of my way. And I went ahead and I got a head start just to save a little bit of time, because even if you're a beginner knitter, you probably already know how to cast on. So I had cast on to do 6 pattern repeats. So I cast on the 60 plus the 1, and then my 3 border stitches on either end. So that gives me a total of 67 cast on stitches. You could do 77, 87, whatever you like. After the 3 stitches to begin with, you'll place your stitch marker. So these are your 3 border stitches on this end, and you will knit that on both sides. On the other end is the same thing. You're going to have your marker and then your 3 final stitches, which will be your border on that side that you will knit on every row. Okay, so I also went ahead and I've done row 1. Row 1, after you cast on, if you're not knitting the first 2 rows, if you are, it's still going to be a wrong side row. You're going to purl. So I purled row 1 all the way across. So now I'm going to do row 2 with you. And I think the pattern is simple enough. And now that you know the terminology, I'm going to work through this row with you, and then we will split ways for a short bit, and we will catch up, and I'll tell you what row in just a minute. And I don't know why. I have ironed my cord. I have tried everything that people have suggested on keeping these cords straight, so I'm open to ideas. I've tried pressing with a hot iron with this in between a dishcloth. I've tried hot water, everything, and they still curl up. Anyway, so now let's go ahead and row 2 reads knit 1. Now this is after your border, so let's do our border. We've got 1, knit 2, and knit 3. Okay, slide your marker, and now the pattern reads knit 1. We knit 1. Okay, now here comes our first yarn over. So we're going to do a yarn over. So you take your yarn, you put it over the needle like this. I'll do that one more time, a little closer. So you take the yarn and you place it over the needle like that. Okay, so this is a yarn over, and now we're going to knit 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to slip, knit 2 together, and pass the slip stitch over. Okay, so here we go. We've done the yarn over, we've knitted our 3. Now we're going to slip a stitch in the knit position. So you're going to take the needle and you're going to slide it under the stitch as if you're going to knit. Okay, and we're simply going to slide that stitch off onto the other needle. All right, then we're going to knit 2 together. So you're going to put your needle in through both stitches. I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay, and you're going to knit those 2 stitches together. All right, and then give it a little tug. And then we're going to pass the slip stitch over. So here's the 2 we knitted together right there. Now the next stitch right here is the one we had passed over before that we slipped. We're going to grab it with our other needle, and we are going to bring it up and pass it over that knit stitch, kind of pull it down a little bit, and that's your slip, knit 2 together, and pass the slip stitch over. Now we're going to knit 3. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now the next on the pattern, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to knit 1. Oh, the clock's going off. Must be time for another cup of coffee. Haha. All right, so there we go. So now we have done the first time through of the repeat on row 2. We have done yarn over, knit 3, slip, knit 2 together, pass slip stitch over, knit 3, yarn over, knit 1. Now we're going to repeat this between the asterisk. We're going to repeat that bit all the way to the end of the row to our other marker. And so that you'll know also, even though it's written down in front of you, rows 2, 4, 6, and 8 is the same thing that we just did. Row 1, 3, 5, and 7 are going to be, and 9 are going to be purl rows, except for your 2 border ends, which will be knit on either side. So now let's do this again. So now, and you don't do the knit 1 again, you do after the asterisk. So you start with the yarn over, okay, yarn over, knit 3, 1, 2, 3, okay, slip, all right, get that up there on the needle, slip, knit 2 together, whoops, get in there, okay, knit 2 together, okay, give it a little tug, reach back, and pull the slip stitch over, okay, and then pattern says to knit 3 again, so 1, 2, 3, now we yarn over, and we knit 1. And I think, like I said, for the beginner knitters, I think this is a fairly easy pattern to follow. But let's do this one more time, maybe 2 or 3 more times. We'll go through it. Okay, so we're going to yarn over. We're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then we're going to slip. We're going to knit 2 together. Okay, give that a little tug. And we're going to pull the slip stitch over. Give it a little tug again. And then we're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do a yarn over and knit 1. All right. And I'm going to do the rest of this row off camera and let you go ahead and get to the end of the row, stop before the stitch marker, and we'll do the border stitches together. Be right back. All right, so I just did the last slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over for row 2, and now we're going to do the final knit 3, 1, 2, 3, and then the pattern tells us to yarn over and knit 1. Okay, now we've finished our pattern repeats. You may have had a lot more, or you may have had the 6 or the 7. Now we're going to pass our marker over, and we're simply going to knit these last 3 stitches. 1, come on, 2, and 3. And also a tip for the beginner knitters, if you're wondering why this is thicker on this end, it's only for this one row. When I cast on, Then on row 1, when I did my purl row, the first 3 stitches that were the border stitches, I went ahead and I held my tail with my working yarn, so it was double, and knitted those first 3 stitches to lock that in. And then this will get sewn in afterwards on the wrong side. So there is row 2, and then we would turn the work, and you can already see, unlike in crocheting, where we have to mark the wrong side because sometimes you can't tell, with knitting, you can tell the wrong side because usually, unless it's a specific pattern, most all the stitches or all the stitches will be in the garter stitch look. They'll be the purl stitches. So let's go over the pattern one more time, and then I'm going to let you work on your own because I think this is kind of simple, even for beginners. And I will keep on working to catch up with you. But we're going to be doing the same thing now. We're going to purl row 3. In fact, let me get you started on that, just in case you're new and you, for some reason, didn't understand what I meant about the knit on both sides. Now for the border stitch, and we'll do the same thing on the other side, we turn it, we knit our first 3, 1, 2, and 3, and this is going to create that garter stitch edge that I said is going to look like a pine cone texture. Then we slip our marker. Now you want to be in the purl position. So purl position, your yarn goes over your needle like a yarn over, except you're not doing a yarn over. You're just putting your yarn in the front position of your needle, and instead of going up under the stitch to knit, you're going down through the stitch. Can you see what I'm doing here? And so instead of going up into the stitch, we're going down into the stitch. Okay, we're going down and then bringing our yarn over like that and bringing it up through this way. We'll do a couple more. So we're going down, and be careful, this is a yarn over from the previous row. Be careful of your yarn overs that they don't slip off the needle. I like to kind of hold it a little bit, put my yarn around and off. Okay, and try to keep your tension about the same, and we'll purl another one, and we'll purl another one. Okay, so if you got the hang of that, I'm going to keep working, and you're going to finish purling this row, knit your 3 border stitches at the other end, and then on row 4 you're going to do the same thing we've just worked on. Row 5 will be a purl row. Row 6 will be the pattern stitches we just worked. Then you're going to do row 7 as a purl row. Again, knitting your border stitches, the 3 stitches on either end. And then row 8 will be the pattern row. And then row 9 will be a purl row. So I will meet you back here at the end of row 9. All right, welcome back. So we are at the end of row 9, and we're going to turn our work. And I also don't know if I'm going to have enough yarn to get through this whole thing. I dug in my stash, and this was the perfect color, by the way, for the pine cone motif, I thought. I had 2.5 skeins of this from another project that was left. And it's a number 4 medium weight. It's called Just Yarn, and you're not going to believe this. Not Hobby Lobby, not Joann's, not Michael's. I got this from the dollar store that's located by me, and they've got all kinds of wonderful yarn now, and it's soft. It's really easy to work with, and I love it. The wrapper, all it said on there was Just Yarn, and above that it said Premier Yarns. And it is made in Turkey. It comes from Turkey. But anyway, so I went down there to get more yesterday, so I'd have it to film today, and they did not have any more of this color left. So if I run short, then we will just accommodate, and we will, on my end, not on your end, on my end, we will jump ahead in the project so that I can finish off with you. But hopefully we'll have enough left. If not, we'll deal with that when we get to it. So now we are coming to row 10. Now let's read through row 10 really quick. And row 10, row 12, row 14, and row 16 is different than rows 2, 4, 6, and 8. The alternate rows 11, 13, and 15 are going to be like the other alternate rows, and they're going to be purl, except for your border stitches, which are knit on both sides. So for row 10, 12, 14, and 16, the pattern reads knit 2 together, okay, and then you have the asterisk. So where the asterisk is, you're going to repeat the pattern repeat in between the two asterisks until you have 9 stitches left before your last stitch marker. So the pattern reads for row 10, 12, 14, and 16, knit 2 together, then you're going to knit 3, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3, slip 1, knit 2 together, and pass the slip stitch over. Okay, so let's go through that a couple of times. And again, this is row 10. So we're going to start by doing our border stitches, okay? And we're going to knit 1, 2, 3, okay? And then we're going to slip our marker. And you know what? I'm going to come in a little bit closer. I know you're not going to really be able to see my wonderful fall decorations if I do this, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing a little better. There we go. Okay, so we've done our 3. Now we're going to knit 2 together. So we're going to start out by knitting 2 together. Okay, and give that a little tug. And then the pattern reads, after the asterisk, knit 3, 1, 2, and 3. Whoops, my hand's up too high. Okay, so we've got our yarn over and knit 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, knit 2 together and knit 1, knit 2, knit 3. Then we're going to yarn over. Okay, and then we're going to knit 1, and then we're going to yarn over again, and we're going to knit 3, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and now it says slip 1, knit 2 together, and pass slip stitch over. So we're going to slip 1 onto this needle here. Okay, we're going to then, let me come in here a little closer, we're going to knit 2 together. Okay, and then we're going to pass the slip stitch over. All right, and then we're going to repeat that. And by the way, I'm using my acrylic needles, which I absolutely love. I switched. I was using my other ones that I like, which are my wooden needles by Knitter's Pride. These are acrylic needles that I got the whole set at Hobby Lobby. And I also have my stainless steel high 5-inch needles with the sharp point that I use for certain projects. But these are wonderful. They don't have too much drag, so the yarn slides very nicely. It doesn't drag so much. I've tried other needles that the yarn just doesn't move on the needles, and not for me. Anyway, let's do this again for row 10. So again, we don't knit 2 together. That was only at the beginning after we did our 3 border stitches and put our marker. Okay, we're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, then we're going to yarn over. We're going to knit 1. We're going to yarn over again. We're going to knit 3, 1, 2, oops, 2, and 3. Okay, and I like to move the work down a little bit as I work. Okay, and now we're going to, again, we're going to slip 1. We're going to knit 2 together. Pull that down a little bit, makes it a little easier to get the needle in there. Knit 2 together, Give that a little tug. And then we're going to pass the slip stitch over. Okay. All right. And then we're going to repeat again. So let's do that again. We're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3, 2, 3. Excuse me. Okay, and then we're going to slip. Then we're going to slip, knit 2 together. Whoops. Okay, and then we're going to reach back and put the slips and put the slip stitch over. Okay. All right. So I'm going to let you continue that on your own, and I will continue. And what I'm going to do, since this is pretty easy for you, we're just going to go ahead and work off camera a little bit, and you got probably a little bit more to do than I do if you're doing a bigger version to be looser on your neck. So I will see you back here at the end of what? Row 16. So I want you to go ahead and finish row 10, row 11. Don't forget to knit your border stitches on both sides, on each row. Row 11 is a purl row. Row 12 is the pattern. Row 13 is purl. Row 14 the pattern. Row 15 is purl. And row 16 is the pattern. So I will see you back here at the end of row 16. Be right back. Okay, we're back, and I have done up to row 16, and as you can see, the pine cones are starting to develop. Let's pull this back so you can see. Okay, and they alternate, so everything alternates, and that's why row 10 is different than the others above it. Did that make sense? Okay, I hope so. All right, and you probably noticed too now, I've switched needles again, but for a very important reason. These needles are wonderful if you have arthritis or what have you, and you really do not want the yarn moving on you. They're very good for people with arthritis, carpal tunnel. They're the bamboo needles by Clover, and Clover is not sponsoring this video at all. I just wanted to mention that to you. I know other knitters that absolutely love them for the reason I just gave you. For me, they are not my personal first go-to choice. Either my Haya or my Knitter's Pride, which I absolutely love. But these, I wanted to go ahead, in continuing this, I wanted to show you so you can see what I mean by the yarn stays on the needle very nicely and it's not going to fall off, I mean, pretty much. So I thought I would show you that. And along with that, I did cut it a little close to the yarn. So what I'm going to do is to allow myself enough, because I'm not going to change colors of yarn, because I just personally think that will throw the look of this project off, even though it is a tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and get you started. And then what we're going to do, now we're on the purl side because we've done rows 1 through 16. Now we're going to be doing all over again because we're going to repeat rows 1 through 16 2 more times. So you're going to do 1 through 16, and then you're going to do 1 through 16 again, and then we'll be ready to bind off and sew up the edges. So let's get started. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to get you started on, whoops, if I can get everything untangled here. Okay, there we go. All right, we're going to start. I'm going to move this camera out just a little bit. There we go. All right, and we are going to start with our border stitches. Okay, get some of this up there. There we go. Now, whoops, and always make sure you get it into that second loop. Sometimes I miss, and just hope I can catch it before I make a mistake. All right, so we're starting with row 1, but we're doing our border stitches first. So we knit 1, we knit 2, we knit 3, and there's our border stitch. Slip your marker, yarn to the front side towards you because this is a purl row. And remember, with purling, we go, can you see it? We go down for the beginner knitters. We go down for the purl row. Instead of the knit row, we always go up from the bottom. So we're going down, and then the yarn comes around like this, and we purl. And we do it again, and we purl. And also keep in mind, and we're going to get to one here shortly, watch those yarn overs from the row before so they don't fall off your needle. It's always good to watch all your stitches, but when you get to a yarn over, like we're going to do right now, you want to, whoops, I say that, and I'm going to get a stitch mixed up here. Just a minute. I don't want that to happen. Hold on. Okay. Sometimes you're going to notice sometimes yarn overs and regular stitches or will catch. But anyway, okay, so here's a yarn over. So being very careful, down through the top, yarn over your needle, not a yarn over, but the yarn over your needle, and you purl. Okay, and again, let me just make sure this is the right stitch and not the wrong one. Why is that? I might have made a mistake on that last row. I don't think, well, I might have. So you know what? There, oh, there, I got it. Okay. So now we're going to knit that and off. I mean, purl, excuse me, purl. Down through the top and purl and purl. And you're just going to purl all the way across to the other end, and then we'll do our edge stitches. So I'll do a few more, and then I will finish it off camera and meet you back. Okay, so we're going down through for the beginner knitters. Take the yarn, can you see, and wrap it behind that needle and to the front of the needle, and then you pull it. Let me see if I can get this close for you to see. Here. Up underneath and then off your needle. Okay, and I will see you back at the end of the row so we can do our border stitches. Okay, I'm going to make you laugh now. Okay, I got to set this down for a minute and I'm going to make you laugh. I really overthought on having enough yarn. So I started examining while we were away from each other to make sure I was going to have enough to get through the next 2 rounds of rows 1 through 16. And in looking at the yarn, I said, oh, I'm not. I'll probably barely make it through the second round of 1 through 16, and maybe not even that. So rather than start that and run short in the middle of the project, I went ahead and just stopped myself right there while I had enough yarn, and I'll have a little bit left over, which isn't enough to do anything, so that'll just go in the scrap trash. So I apologize for that. But what I'm going to do, which is another reason why this video is going to be a little bit shorter than it should be, because we're cutting out so much time because I'm not having to do 2 more 1 through 16 rows. Anyway, aside from that, the only other thing I'm going to point out to you, because I'm going to show you how to cast off now, you're not going to be casting off on the right side row. You're going to be casting off on the wrong side row, okay, on the purl row. Now that you've completed your 2 more times of rows 1 through 16, you're going to be on this end over here. See, I'm getting all confused now because I'm worried about not having enough yarn. Oh, I think that's literally the first time that's ever happened to me when I've done a tutorial or even making a project on my own where I've really run short. And if it was that I could go back down and get more, I could have done that, but they didn't have any more of this color, and the lady said that they weren't going to be getting any more of a lot of the yarn in, the colors that weren't selling. So I'm making the best that I can do because I don't want you to have a multicolored tutorial project. And it also, I think, helps in the learning process to be able to teach off the cuff. So anyway, you're going to end up on your final row 16. You've come down, pretend this is row 16. You've come down, you've done row 16. So now you would turn it, and you're going to be on this side over here to do your bind off, okay? But I'm going to bind off only because I don't have enough yarn to get to the other side to do it and bind off. It's one or the other in this case. I'm going to bind off on the right side row, but you are not. Follow the pattern. You are binding off on the wrong side row. So you finish row 16, you turn the work, and then you're going to be doing what I'm showing you now on that wrong side row. And I like to bind off this way because it gives, I think, a nicer edge. Let me grab the finished one and show you again. I think it gives a nicer edge on the top. Otherwise, you have what looks like a crocheted chain on the edge. Doing it this way, it's more of a finished, sort of a rolled edge. Okay, so let me begin to show you for the beginning knitters. You seasoned knitters know how to bind off. You're going to be binding off in the knit fashion, meaning just as if you were knitting. No purling. You're going to knit in the knit fashion. Now, sometimes if you see a pattern or someone tells you, oh, bind off in pattern, then that means, for example, if you had done a rib stitch, which is maybe knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, or a 2x2, knit two, purl two, knit two, purl two, and the pattern calls for bind off in pattern, then the knit stitches you'll bind off in the knit stitch, the purl stitches you'll bind off in the purl stitch. But in this case, on the wrong side row, we are going to bind off in the knit stitch. So to do that, the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to get in a little closer here for you. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to knit the first stitch. Okay, we're going to knit the first stitch. We're going to knit the second stitch, second, not second. All right, we're going to knit the second stitch. Then we're going to reach back and pull that first stitch over and off. Okay, let's do that again. So we're gonna knit the first stitch. We're just gonna knit, reach back, pull it over. Okay, we can lose the marker now. We don't need that. Now we're gonna do again. We're gonna knit. We're gonna reach back, and we're gonna pull the slip stitch. Well, it's not a slip stitch, but we're gonna pull it back over. Okay, again, knit. Reach back, pull over and off the needle. Knit, reach back, over and off the needle. Okay, a couple more times. We're going to knit, we're going to reach back and off the needle. Okay, and you're going to do that all the way across, and then your whole piece will be off the needles. Now, you'll notice my edge looks different than your edge is going to look, and that's because I have binded off on the right side row and not the wrong side of the project. When you bind off on the wrong side of the project, you'll have the finished edge that I showed you. So go ahead and bind off, and as soon as you bind off, meet me back here, and I will show you how to sew up the edges. All right, we're coming up to the last few stitches, so I thought I would do this on camera for you. Again, we're binding off. You're on the wrong side, not the right side, and you're binding off in the knit stitch. Okay, now I come to another marker and we're done with that. Oops, knit, reach back, pull it over and off the needle, and reach back, pull it over and off the needle, and the last stitch. Okay, and we knit, reach back, pull it off the needle. Now, what I normally do is I'm going to pull this through because there we go. Okay, so now you would have binded off on this side, so you'd actually be over on this end. your edge, now remember, your edge is going to look a little different than this because you're binding off on a wrong side, not a right side. If you like it this way, then what you could do, if you like it this way, do if you like the neck edge like this, after you do row, let's see, 16, go ahead and do one more purl row and then come back on the right side and cast off. But I think you'll like it either way. I just happen to prefer where it doesn't look like a chain. Okay, so now the reason that I just pulled this off and I didn't snip or cut, like I said, there's only a little bit of yarn left, but this, if I just clip this, there's not enough to save for anything. This here, since I wasn't able to get all the way through the whole project, like I thought, because again, already having one finished one and then doing the second one, if I snip this, then I can't really rip it out and use it for another project. But I think there's enough here to do a small project or add to a project, a cuff on a sweater or something, if I just rip this out when we're done. Because I already have one finished one for myself, and I don't personally know anybody that wears neck warmers except for myself. So when I make neck warmers, needless to say, they're never for gifts because I'm the only one that wears them. All my friends, however, they like scarves. I make scarves for birthdays and so on. But anyway, aside from that, so now what we're going to do is you're going to want to sew your edges together. Okay, so normally I would snip this off, pull it through the loop, and like you do even when you crochet, and pull it tight so you have a knot here. And I would leave a long enough tail, about, well, let's zoom out here a little bit. I would leave a long enough tail to do the sewing instead of starting a new piece. Okay, so let's just pretend for a moment that you've knotted that off. Well, you're going to have to cut the tail long enough, but then you pull it through, knot it off, and now you're going to sew your ends together. And before I show you how to do that, let me show you on the finished one what that looks like when it's finished and how it does really look like the texture of a pine cone. So if you see the back edge, which will be your center back, you see how, let's see if I can get this more in focus here. Oh, I guess that's good enough for guesswork. Okay, anyway, so you see how these are your two, what were your border stitches, now have come together and formed this, what I think looks like a pine cone. Okay, so to get that, you've got a head start by having your two border stitches. So when they're sewn together, let's turn it the other way so you can see. When they're sewn together on the right side, you're going to have that pine cone stitch edge, or not pine cone stitch, but pine cone texture. Okay, so how you're going to achieve that, make sure your right sides are facing. Okay, and then with your needle and your yarn, you're going to match up I like to match up these ridges from the garter stitch. Can you see the ridges? See, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Okay, so I match up the ridges on both sides. All right, and then holding it in my hand like this, I take a darning needle or a yarn needle, and I go into the top stitch of each. Let's see if I can bring this close enough for you to see. So I go into this top stitch, into that top stitch, and back and forth this way from side to side, pulling it slightly tight as I go, so you don't want it to be loose. And then when you get to the other end, pull it through, make a small knot, and then take your loose end that's going to be left over with the needle still on it and weave that through and snip it off. And that's all there is to it. And again, sorry that I bumped the camera. Sorry that I ran out of yarn, but it was either that or a multitude of any other color thrown in there. And I thought, no, I don't want my people seeing a multicolored pine cone motif when pine cones aren't red or purple or yellow and green variegated. So you got the idea. I mean, I have other colors besides that, but pine cones, I try to go for the real look of something. So, and you see how here we got some pine cones here. You see how closely that goes nicely. Well, I thank you for watching the tutorial. And as always, don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you'll be notified when I upload new videos. You'll automatically get notified so that you can tune in. And as always, be safe, be healthy, may God bless. This is the Needling Hooker saying, talk to you later. See you next time.